Glad to have you here on the podcast. Glad to be chatting with you, catching up. I mean, it feels like forever between COVID and everything's going on in your life, but I'm excited to chat with you. I mentioned this a little bit, but this is what I think of you. When I think of you, I think of mindset. And I think of that, just the conversations we've shared. And, so when this podcast is going to release, it's kind of in this, 3 or 4 episodes all about mindset. And we were talking a little bit about that, before we started recording. So just kind of start off, when you think of mindset, what do you think about?
Well, that's one of our leadership traits that we teach in our basketball program. So it's a little bit of a cheat because we think about growth versus fixed. And there's a great book called Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, who really changed my world, not just my basketball world, but my parenting world. Because I vividly remember my kids drawing little paintings for me or doing a math problem. They'd bring it to me and I'd be like, that's unbelievable. You're so smart. You didn't even try and you got it right. And I'm praising them for not trying, for lack of effort, for being smart, for being talented. And then I read this book about growth mindset and the importance of encouraging people for effort and attitude and how adversity can be really good if you have the right mindset on it. And so, when I think about mindset, I think that's the biggest piece, is realizing where you have a fixed mindset and where you have a growth mindset, because it's not like you have just one or the other in every environment. Even in the same environment, I was a good basketball player on the defensive end. I had a really nice growth mindset. I could handle failure. I wasn't afraid to make a mistake because it was a growth opportunity. And then I crossed the half court line and I have the biggest fixed mindset where I'm afraid to make a mistake. And I have this attitude, which is you can't miss the shot if you don't take the shot. And so it's amazing how even as an adult, I have to still work on that growth mindset.
So you peeked into my notes. I was going to ask you about, Carol's book, because I didn't know about the book till you. And so I massively enjoyed the book. How did that book come into your life? And why? I mean, you mentioned it kind of as a parenting, but did it dramatically identify your past? And how did that say, all right, I'm going to help players moving forward?
Well, one of the benefits of working at Gonzaga is you're just around motivated people who are always searching for the edge, for the next thing. And so at the time, I was working not just with basketball, but I was training golf, tennis, soccer. And I believe it was the soccer coach here, Amy Edwards, back in the day, that brought the book to me. And she brought a couple great books to me. One of my other favorite books is called The Talent Code by Boyle. Yeah. And that was a game changer. Just not only so fun to read, but also a great parenting and a great coaching book. And so she had brought that in my life. And it was, like I said, a big aha moment. And I'm really big in the idea of, if you know it and you don't do it, you don't know it. So it's not enough just to read books. How are you going to implement them into your life? And so here at Gonzaga, we use the think, say, do model. And so what are you supposed to think about mindset? Well, we think growth versus fixed. And what do you say? What do people with a growth mindset, how do they speak? Well, we say good. So when we have a challenge that comes upon us, if all of a sudden, we find out that instead of playing an average team, we're playing the first place team in the division, we say good. Instead of, looking and saying, oh, we have a bad ranking in the NCAA tournament. If you get paired up and have a bad ranking, good. To be the best, you have to beat the best. And so that's what we say. And what do we do about mindset? Well, we nod when we're coached. And this is a huge one. I coach not only here at GU, but I coach my kids' sport teams. And this is one of the first lessons I teach them, which is you come to practice because you want to get better. You don't come to practice because you're already the best and you already know everything. And so you should be really excited when a coach tells you how to improve, you nod your head. Hey, you're supposed to be deeper in the stance instead of saying, oh, well, coach, I was this or I was that. You don't make excuses. You nod your head. You accept, you invite the feedback. And so that's how it kind of came into my life, and that's how we've been practicing it. And what I love about leadership is I'm teaching it to the kids. I'm also giving myself friendly reminders. Am I nodding when I'm getting feedback? Most of the time I do, unless it's coming from my wife, though. Then I kind of, I tend to fight it a little bit.
I can't relate at all, Mike. Not one bit. So mentioned a little bit about Division I athlete. You played at Gonzaga, then you played professionally. You're back in the community at Gonzaga, and in the 20 plus years now since you had played at Gonzaga, it's really taken on this culture of mindset and growth. And I know yourself and Coach Few and so many of the other former players in the community, like John Stockton, have been a major part of that. How is that, the seed of when you guys first got started and really made that run into the Sweet 16, how has that evolved, that idea of mindset and either the seeds that Coach Few, sowed into the program and everyone else has carried the torch? How has that mindset part really been, this culmination to now having a kind of perennial success in the men's sports, the women's sports? How has that all evolved through, the community at Gonzaga?
Well, when I first started coaching my kids, I asked Coach Few for some advice on what I should do to be a successful coach. And he says, well, if you want to be a great coach, you got to get great players. And that's what he's been unbelievable at doing. Although the faces might have changed a little bit over the years. We might have taller, faster, stronger, maybe more talented athletes, maybe. The thing that has not changed is the mindset, the toughness. When I was coming to Gonzaga in high school, I was the best player around. I was, MVP of my league. I was the hardest worker I knew. And then I came to GU and I had a rude awakening, which was there's another level to this thing. Matt Santangelo was my roommate and my best friend the first day on campus. And I didn't know that there was another level to hard work, and he had it. When most of our friends, our fellow students were going to parties on Friday night, he had somehow came across the key to the gym, and we would go get shots up Friday, Saturday night in the off season. And I was just happy to do it because I just love basketball, but I'd never seen that level of he was just so meticulous with his workouts. Another guy was Richie Fromm. I had class with him my freshman year, and I'm in the back taking notes on the English class or whatever class we're taking. I look over, he's taking notes, except for he's writing his individual workout. He's going to get 20 shots from the left elbow. He's going to get 50 reverse finishes. And I'm like, okay, while I'm doing something else that's non-basketball, these guys are just obsessed with getting better. And so that was kind of the culture back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then I had a really cool story happen just the other day. I've been staying away from everyone. I think I kind of told you I had open heart surgery, and so I wasn't able to come down to the gym. But I forgot something in my office right before the surgery, and so it was 10 o'clock at night. We figured everyone would be gone for the gym. My wife drives me down, and I go through Volcker Center, and I hear music and a ball bouncing. 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday. And it's Jalen Suggs getting his workout in. And it just did my heart so good because we all get to see the fruits of his labor. We get to see how talented he is. And people say, oh, wow, what a gifted athlete. And maybe he's gifted. But to go shoot at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday when most people, once again, are watching movies or doing what college students do, he's putting the work in. And so I think that's been the real foundation of Gonzaga's success is people want to get better here. And it doesn't happen by accident. My fellow strength coach, Travis Knight, we've worked together for the past 20 years. He's a great guy, and I've learned so much from him. And every Monday, they have these things called PGMs, and they stand for Personal Growth Mondays, where it's just him and the team, no coaches, and they have discussions, not necessarily lectures, mostly he asks great questions where the guys can self-discover what it means to personally grow, to be their best, to do the interior work. And I think when you do that every single week, when that's a priority, it just happens that it shows up on the court. And so once again, just another reason why I love being in this environment, because I'm so interested in it. And then I have another strength coach that might even be better at me, at doing it. So I just get to learn every week here.
Well, I mean, it really comes to that, the idea that iron sharpens iron. When you surround yourself with people that are going to, lift you up and challenge you in a healthy, good way, it's like, hey, we can do this together. As you mentioned about Matt and Richie, and, I know you've spent a lot of time with John Stockton, and, he, as I look at and have gotten to know a little bit from afar, different relationships, like you mentioned Travis and to see John and to see Mark. And they're two totally different guys, two totally different personalities, but yet there's a lot of similarities. Where, as I look at them, they are very unassuming, humble guys that just put their head down and do the work. And, again, as you mentioned that about Jalen, which thank you for sharing that story, because, as this comes out, hopefully Gonzaga's making that run to the finals like they should, because they have that dedication, that talent. We're recording it still in the, the WCC, as, semifinals. Women's just made it to the finals today. As part of that culture, it continues to breed it, where it's that's who we are. How much has, as you've been a part of that and seen this evolve over 20 years, taking on that, we are going to do the little things. How has that been emulated at every turn? So when a new player comes in, they see the culture that you laid the foundation as a player and in the community. How much of that mindset really has been cultural?
Well, one of my mentors told me that everyone should find someone that's 10 years older than them and have them as a mentor, because for me, I'm in my 40s. Well, I know what it's like to be in my 40s, but I don't know what it's like to be in my 50s. And so I think that mentorship piece is crucial. And you brought up John Stockton, and I told you there's another level that I got to see with Richie and with Santangelo and Casey Calvary, all of these guys that were just so mentally tough and put the work in. I'm glad I met them first, because I would have never believed the next jump, which is John Stockton. And he is the pro's pro. He is the hard worker's hard worker. All of these guys that I play with, and anyone that's ever been around John is in awe of how tough he is. I just did a podcast episode yesterday with Jeremy Jones. He's playing over in Europe, and he was a walk-on, ended up breaking into the starting lineup, and he talked about the Sunday games that we have. And the story he shared was really cute. He came in and he said he almost didn't come, but then he thought, well, I'll just show up and maybe sit on the sideline and watch, because he had a really bad headache. It was almost making him sick to his stomach. His head hurt so bad. And so he came up to John and said, hey, I'm just not feeling good. My head hurts. And before he could even finish his sentence by saying, I'm just going to watch today, John said, well, good thing that your head's a long ways from your heart. You're not going to die. Let's go. And he is just so tough. And so I just love being around people that are the best in their craft. And so to be around Coach Few, I mean, he's one of the best basketball coaches of our time. John Stockton, in my opinion, is the greatest point guard in the history of basketball. And I just in awe of people. Like, I got to go to a Stevie Wonder concert a couple of years ago, and I was with my whole family, and I just sat there and I just cried. You just see greatness, and no matter what it is. And so it's just, I got to pinch myself that I get to be around John, because his mindset was what really, I think, lifted us to the next level. Every preseason from September to mid-October, we got to play with John. He would come and he would get prepared for his preseason by playing with us. And I just tell you what, like, most of us turn up our intensity like a radio dial. We go from level 6 to 7 to 8. And John's like a light switch. He steps on the court, we check the ball, it's like off to just on. And before you even know what's happened, he's punched you in the gut and he's laying the ball up and he's already playing defense. It's amazing how intense he is. That kind of stuff rubs off. And then it's amazing to see how many other guys now have passed on that torch. We have Gary Bell on the men's side working, and he is just a phenomenal person, a phenomenal coach. And so to have him mentoring the guys, he's about 10 years older than the current players. And so I think that connection will be awesome. And we've mentioned the guys like, the Jalen Suggs of the world. Hopefully we'll be lucky enough to have him come back in the summers and mentor these current guys.
Yeah, well, I think it is that transcending legacy that when people can model after and see, hey, all right, how are you walking through that path? It is really an important part of mindset. You don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And, as you mentioned, where you come out of high school, coming out of, Western Washington, you are this MVP of your league. You come to Gonzaga and all of a sudden you're just another guy. And, we have that so often in life where, we can have success at whatever level. And all of a sudden we see a new challenge, and that's every day. I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you mentioned earlier, your open heart surgery. I know your senior year at Gonzaga, you also during the tore your Achilles tendon. So those two medical setbacks that I know, two totally different points in life. how did your mindset affect you in that, and how did that model to others? Because I've heard those stories, and I'd love to hear it from your mouth.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind with my Achilles tear was the importance of teammates, the importance of family, because I think from the outside, a lot of people saw this positive, tough, stoic guy that was cheering on the sidelines. What they didn't see was moments after I tore my Achilles, me crying like a baby in the locker room. And I always get emotional when I talk about this, so I'll try not to cry. But I remember my dad coming in the locker room and just laying it out for me. This is what you're going to do, Mike. Of course, cry. I'm so sad. I'm going to be crying with you later on tonight. But right now, this is what you need to do. Your teammates are about to come in at halftime, and you're going to greet them with the high five, and you're going to tell them that they have to step up their game. They're down a soldier, so everyone's got to pick it up, and you're going to be right with them along the whole way. And I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to curl in the ball at that moment. And so I just so thankful and so lucky. Not everyone has a dad like that. Not everyone has a coach or a friend that's be able to be there for them and be their strength when they're not strong. And so I did it. My teammates came in, and they got to see the positive side. And so just so thankful for that. And then what's kind of cool with the experience is that idea of we'll see. There's a cool parable about the kid that gets a horse, and everyone in the community says, "Oh, that's great." And the wise man says, "We'll see." And then, the kid falls off the horse and breaks his arm, and everyone says, "Oh, that's bad." And the wise man says, "We'll see." And then the military comes in. They're going to take away all the able-bodied people, but they don't take the boy because he has a broken arm. And everyone in the community says, "That's good." And the wise man says, "We'll see." And I think having all those setbacks and having the experience of seeing, well, even the bad things have turned out really well. The tearing my Achilles, I tell people, is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. It allowed me to stay around and take one extra year at school so my fiance, now my wife, at the time could finish her college education because she was going to drop out of school early and go to Europe with me. And I thought that was pretty selfish, to take away my wife from all her friends and take away that senior year experience. But because I tore my Achilles, she got to finish her degree. And I got to fall in love with strength conditioning. At that time, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And laying in my bed, rehab, and I started thinking, well, I love nutrition. I love basketball. I love weightlifting. Why don't I be a strength coach? And so that year when I took off, I got to study nutrition, study working out. I got certified as a strength coach. And then I approached Gonzaga, and they didn't have a strength coach at the time. And I said, I will train the men's and women's basketball teams for free if you let me take classes. So I got to go back and take anatomy, physiology, take my labs. And so what a great experience to be able to have a first job right out of college working with Gonzaga basketball. Are you kidding? So then I got to play overseas, and even that was a great thing because by the time you're senior, it's kind of hard not to get burnt out. You've just never had a break since the time I was 4 years old. I've been playing basketball, and you almost take it for granted. And that whole year I couldn't play hoops. I just started itching, and I started seeing how lucky the guys were. Like, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. to go train at Gold's Gym, and I'm training these people that may or may not even want to be there. And all I could think about is, man, if I'm going to get up and go to the gym, it's so much more fun if I'm the one working out, if I'm the one sweating and shooting. And so it gave me my love for basketball back. And so for all of those reasons, tearing my Achilles was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And so when I found out that I had to have open heart surgery, I was just sharing with you before the show, I didn't even want to know what it was about because no matter how hard it was or how easy it was, whatever, I knew it would end up being one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. And it was a lot more difficult than I thought. It was a rough time. But now on the other hand, it's the same thing. I never thought I would appreciate walking up the stairs. I'm literally excited to walk up the stairs. Like, that's my goal today is, hey, every hour, take a break, go up and down the stairs. No one's on campus today because everyone's in Vegas. So I got a little basketball, and I've just been doing little jogs up and down the court. And I'm like, how fun is this? I get to play hoops. I get to run up and down. And once again, you kind of take all that stuff for granted until you can't walk, until you can't breathe, until you're scared you might not be able to live. And then all of a sudden, this is a gift. So I just love that idea of, those things when those tough circumstances come into your life to be able to sit back and say, we'll see how this thing turns out, instead of judging it as something bad.
I want to circle back and kind of tie into this idea that, sometimes the greatest mistakes or adversities can be what really propels you into something new. And one of the things that you mentioned is that you were known as a lockdown defender. That was Mike Nilson, was just like all defense, just the guy. And then you mentioned that you get on the other side of the court and you kind of froze up, is what you said. You didn't want to make a mistake. And a couple weeks ago, I was with my son, and we were at a basketball tournament. He's in 5th grade playing basketball, and I happened to be, doing the scores, and Luke Ridnour's dad. So Luke Ridnour played in the NBA for 12 years. His dad was a long-time, very successful coach in the Pacific Northwest, and he was sitting next to me. So I got to visit with him the whole time. Just a great guy. And Luke was coaching his son. His son was playing against my son. And his son makes this drive to the basket and just kind of, throws the ball up. And he didn't say, oh, man, that wasn't a good play. It was a good try, good effort. Keep trying. And as you mentioned that about being on the offensive side and not having that freedom in your mind to say, hey, I'm just going to try. My son, again, here the other day, he was bringing up old NBA highlights of the 10 greatest moves. And he's looking at them, and he's just in awe of looking at Allen Iverson and, Tim Duncan. It's just brand new world to him. And as I'm thinking about this, as you're sharing, how important from a mindset point of view it is not to be afraid to fail, not be afraid to make a mistake. So as you're working with these really elite players, players that are going to go in the NBA, or players that you've worked with that are now in the NBA doing well, all-stars, how have you helped them, or how have you guys really recognized the opportunities like, hey, make mistakes, it's okay, and have that mindset?
To me, it's everything, and I'm almost thankful that I'm not great at it in areas. I have this mentor that I meet with, and he always says, Mike, aren't you glad that we're kind of messed up like we are? Because if we were perfect, just think about how conceited and arrogant we'd be. And so I have to remind myself of that, because I'm pretty good at beating myself up on the basketball court when I make a mistake. Yet I want to be able to teach other high school and college athletes the importance of next play. Right? You make a mistake, even the greatest shooter in the world, a Steph Curry, is missing half his 3-pointers. He went 0 for 10 one game. Now, me, I would never get to that, because if I'm 0 for 2, I'm not shooting anymore. He was 0 for 10, and then he comes back the next game and sets the NBA record. And so those are the stories I tell, not only to my players, but the story I tell to myself. And it's really difficult. I like to share my failure. And for a lot of years, I didn't want to tell anyone that I was afraid, because I was embarrassed. In high school, like I said, I was starting guard. I scored a lot. And then I got to college, and that wasn't my area of expertise. And we had guys that were better shooters, better slashers, better finishers. And I kind of started just navigating in to a spot where I could find time on the court. Because if I was known as a shooter, I'm not going to be as good as Richie Fromm. I would be sitting the bench behind him my whole career. If my job was to be able to penetrate and kick and handle the ball, I'd be behind Santangelo for all 4 years. But I found a little niche of rebounding, defending, diving on the floor, toughness, hustle. And that was a spot where there's always room for a guy like that on the court. And so I could enhance all my teammates' skill sets. And so I doubled down, and I got so confident. And like I said, I actually enjoyed making mistakes, which is so crazy. The year after I graduated, or 2 years after, Dan Dickau was getting ready for the NBA draft. And I said, hey, if you'd like, I'll be full-time defense for you. Like whatever you need to do. If you're working on your left hand or driving to the rim, I'll just guard you. And he was an All-American NBA player, and I loved going against him. And I wasn't afraid, oh, gosh, what if he beats me in scores? I'm like, well, perfect. Then I'll be able to learn another option, a different place to put my hands so I can strip the ball or contest his shot. And so those are the things I want to remind myself on offense, which is every time you miss a shot and turn the ball over, if you have the right mindset, it's an opportunity to learn. It's kind of like, gosh, there's a really good, like a Disney movie about an evil character that every time they make a mistake, they have this computer, And then they could say, oh, okay, now I'll never make that mistake again. So if someone chinks the armor, oh, okay. And so it's like this machine that constantly keeps learning and learning. And I think, boy, if I could have that on offense, I'd really be able to help some other kids out that are struggling. And so right now, I don't know, I struggle with it because I always believe you can't give something that you don't have. And so I don't have that on offense. And so I really struggle with how do I give that to someone? But I always think, well, but I have it in this other area. And if they could maybe learn a life lesson, or if they can see the correlation between what I'm doing over in this area to what they need help with, it might help a bit, you know. I think if I was really good at teaching it, I would have a growth mindset on offense. So come back and check in with me in another couple of years and see if I've gotten better.
Sorry. Well, you know, my thought on that is if we can accept it, first of all, then we're at the point to start doing something about it. We're going to the root of saying, oh, why did that come? Why do we have that mindset? What can we do about those thoughts? And now what can we do to start correcting them? If you dig to the base of the plant, then you can understand why the fruit that's coming out. And if you want to change that, then, you know, dig to the base and you know, able to kill that plant as opposed to just taking off a branch or two thinking you're going to affect it. I want to transition from the standpoint of, we talked, you know, something about, you know, here, obviously Gonzaga, but talking about your experience and seeing a lot of very talented people, that have, you know, you've gotten to know throughout the entire world of strength and conditioning coaching and basketball. There's a lot of them that have amazing talent, but never were able to capitalize on that talent because they didn't have a growth mindset. You know, what's something that really stuck out to you as far as why they didn't have that mindset? And I'm not looking to, you know, point fingers at someone, but just some of those attributes. Was it, you know, limiting belief? Was it that they didn't have that positive reinforcement? What's something that you recognize, like, man, if they were just in a better environment, or they had this mindset, I know that talent would take them to places they couldn't imagine?
Well, you know, I have my little program called Hoop Commitment. And the reason why I named it Hoop Commitment is because when I learned the difference between a goal and a commitment, it totally changed my life. And goals are things that you want to do. So I always tell my athletes, when I say, what's a goal? You say, I want to. And we all should set goals. You know, we should all want to, you know, shoot 50% from the 3-point line. And we should all get, you know, want to get a Division I scholarship or be a professional athlete. I think all of those are awesome. But I want to, or a goal, is just not strong enough to ensure that you're going to achieve your dreams. And that's why I think we need something like a commitment. And when I say what's a commitment, I want my athletes to think, I have to. And so when you can change I want to into I have to, your whole life changes. And I think to be a great player is more than just what you do on the basketball court. Matter of fact, most of what you do off the court is what supplements or what gives you the energy to be successful on the court. And so that's why I think this leadership piece that you're a master in is so important, because we know basketball and life is a team sport. And so it doesn't matter how good you are. If you're surrounded by people that can't get the job done, you're not going to be as successful as you want to be. We know sleep is so important. We know nutrition is so important. And so this year, what I'm doing is, for the whole year, I've made a commitment to study nutrition. And I think if you want to be successful at nutrition, it comes down to commitment. I have to. It's not that hard. It just takes a long time. And so the biggest mistake I see people that who don't reach their potential are people that haven't made a commitment, haven't switched their mindset to, not like, oh gosh, I want to eat really well today. I should eat really well today. If you say I should, there's no way it's happening. I'll do it tomorrow. But if you say I have to, and not like I have to like feel sorry for me, like, oh, I guess I have to go to school today. You say it like, this is so important to me. There's no way I'm going to fail. I have to do this. And so this year I made a commitment to study nutrition every single day for 365 days for at least 15 minutes. And that was really difficult to do when I'm in the hospital. The day after my heart surgery, I did not want to study for 15 minutes. If it was a goal, I would have failed. But I have this calendar on my wall, and I made a commitment to myself. And not only that, now I tell everyone on my podcast that I'm doing it. So now everyone's going to check in. Everyone's kind of waiting for me to break that chain of success. And every day that I complete my commitment, I earn the right to put an X on my calendar. And so I have over 1,000 X's. I can't even remember how many I have now. But there's no way I was going to skip a day, because I don't care if I'm sick, tired, and motivated. If I just had heart surgery, I could study for 15 minutes. It might come in the form of I got energy for 5 minutes right now, then I got to take a nap and I'll do 5 minutes later. But to me, I think, I guess everyone that has a hammer sees, things as nails. And to me, the hammer that I have is commitment. And it's not the only way to be successful, but I tell you what, it's a surefire way to be successful. And so that's what I've been teaching my kids, not just my athletes. My son Carter loves basketball. He loves guitar. Well, if you want to be a good guitar player, it's not that hard. The guy I'm studying this year, Dr. Berardi, says people overestimate how difficult things are going to be, and they underestimate how long it's going to take. And so people overestimate how hard it is to learn how to play guitar. It's actually really easy. You just have to learn how to put your fingers here and here, but it just takes a long time. They think they might be able to do that in a week or a month. If you want to be a good guitar player, plan on the next 5 to 10 years digging in and doing work. And so that's something that I really want to teach my kids. It's something that I practice. It's something that today I'm going to go home and I'm going to study my nutrition. I'm going to practice my guitar scales because I just love doing it. I love the idea of putting in work, not because I want to, but because I have to. Music's that important to me that I'm going to commit time every day to doing it.
Well, I mean, I think the example that you share through hoop commitment and your involvement, and I'm fortunate that you get to put that, share that to my sons. And, as my older son, who his soccer club is going through that process and earning his X. And what I love to see is I don't have to remind him. He's doing it because he's seeing the value of getting better. And so then I'll be asking him, hey, what's your task this week? And, then he'll tell me, and, he gets enjoyment out of it. And I think that's where, when it starts young and it's part of, hey, I want this to be a part of my life, to where I have to, because that is the routine that I set to set my mindset in order. To me, that's what's really important. It's kind of one of my 5 R's for mindset is routine, and building that routine in. And just as you've modeled to me, as far as earning that X that you learned from Seinfeld, if you can commit to that, man, you can grow and develop any skill to some level. The key is understanding which skill is going to help you become a master at what you are. Like, when you're a defensive specialist, it's what can I do to be able to move laterally better? What can I do to make sure that I know how to, drive that offensive player where he isn't comfortable? What can I do to learn those skills? I have learned that about you. And it's like, now you're talking about nutrition, and as you've grown as a leader, is how can I build my skills up so that way I'm more valuable to others, because that value's already there. So I appreciate that example you are for me and in this community. And I'm, thankful to call you a friend and be able to, have you impart some of those learning lessons that you're learning on myself and others.
Oh, I feel the same way. I love our meetups, our connections, because not only is it good to have a friend like you, but I always learn something new. And thanks for all you do for our community and for leadership. And it's just an honor to be on the show.
Well, thank you again, Mike. Go Zags. And I hope when this is airing that we're raising a banner here in Spokane. Why not two? The women's and men's. Why not? Right? That'd be awesome. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Tyler.